Tycoon returns with Mistress, finds ex-wife and triplets at his father's funeral inside the ancestral hall. The air was thick with reverence. Framed portraits of generations of power and pride lined the mahogany walls. At the center, in a silver casket surrounded by white lilies, lay Frederick Langston, patriarch, tycoon, and the man whose death had pulled together fragments of a shattered family. Everything was quiet until the unmistakable sound of tires on gravel turned every head. A sleek black car pulled up to the front entrance. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, sharply dressed, commanding. His eyes were cold but distant, his presence impossible to ignore. "Ethan Langston," someone whispered. "He came back, and not alone." From the other side of the car, a woman stepped out in a designer black dress, high heels clicking against the stone path. Her beauty was sharp, almost theatrical. Serena Lee, the woman Ethan had left everything for. His company, his marriage, his entire past. The murmurs started almost instantly. They hadn't been seen in the city for over 3 years. After the scandal, after the betrayal, Ethan had disappeared with Serena, cutting all ties with his family and especially with her, Elena. Ethan walked forward slowly, hand casually resting on Serena's waist as though nothing in the world could shake his composure. But as he stepped into the hall, his eyes flicked to the front of the room. There, near the casket, a woman stood still and quiet. Her figure was slightly thinner, her posture more guarded, but Ethan would have recognized her anywhere. Elena. She stood dressed in modest black, her hands folded in front of her, her dark brown hair tied back simply. Time hadn't erased the softness in her face, nor the sadness in her eyes, but there was something new: strength. A quiet strength that struck Ethan like a punch to the chest. He stopped walking. Serena leaned toward him. "What's wrong?" she whispered, not bothering to hide her annoyance. But Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were locked onto the 3 small figures standing beside Elena. 3 children, all around 2, maybe 3 years old. 2 boys and a girl. Beautiful, solemn, dressed in tiny black suits and a dress. And then Ethan noticed. The boy in the middle had his eyes. Exactly. The same almond shape, the same shade of deep storm gray. No, couldn't be. One of the boys tugged on Elena's hand and looked up at her. "Mommy, why is everyone so sad?" Elena knelt beside him gently. "Because someone very special has gone to heaven, Carino." "And who's that man looking at us?" he asked softly, pointing directly at Ethan. Elena froze. She didn't look at Ethan. She didn't move for several seconds. But then she stood up, slowly, protectively pulling the children closer. "He's no one important, sweetheart." Her voice was calm, but it sliced through Ethan like glass. No one important. She hadn't even told them. He wasn't even a memory to them. Ethan felt the weight of those words in his chest, as if they had sucked all the air out of the room. His grip on Serena loosened unconsciously. The hall, the murmurs, the casket, everything faded into the background. He took a step forward. "Elena," he said, the word tasting foreign in his mouth. She finally looked at him, and her eyes... Oh God! Those eyes held so much pain and dignity he almost looked away. But she didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't soften. She simply gave him a look that said everything. "You don't get to speak my name. Not anymore." Before Ethan could say anything else, a voice from the pulpit interrupted. "We will now begin the service for Mr. Frederick Langston. Please take your seats." People began to sit, but Ethan remained standing, torn between the reality he had returned to and the ghosts he had left behind. He took a seat near the front, Serena beside him, but his eyes kept drifting to Elena and the children. 3 of them, triplets. His mind raced back to the last night he had seen her. The argument, the accusations, the disbelief. She had tried to say something, hadn't she? She had cried and reached for him. But he had already believed Serena. He had already chosen pride. And now, she stood just meters away, no longer begging, no longer broken. She was a mother now, protective, proud, fiercely alone. And those children were his. His hands trembled slightly in his lap. Serena noticed and narrowed her eyes. "You're not seriously," she whispered sharply. "Not now," he said coldly, jaw clenched. But even as the pastor began the eulogy, Ethan couldn't hear the words. His heart was pounding in his ears. He stared at the children and felt something twist inside him. Regret, guilt, grief, it was everything at once. The truth was standing in front of him, and he hadn't even recognized it when it was growing inside her. He had walked away without looking back. Now he was back, but too late, and as the candles flickered near the casket, Ethan Langston finally realized the weight of what he had lost, and what he might never reclaim. Você diz. Certo, agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a história sem marcos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico tu com dialogo como su faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita moco. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters o ChatGPT diz. The sound of rain tapping against the long stained glass windows echoed through the estate like a slow heartbeat. The funeral had ended, the casket lowered, the whispers silenced. For now. But Ethan Langston stood frozen in the vast corridor just outside the reception hall, staring at the closed double doors. He couldn't breathe. Inside those doors were 3 children with his eyes, and the woman he once vowed to protect, to cherish, to never let go of, now stood in silence, shielding those children from him, as if he were the threat. He leaned against the wall, eyes closed, remembering 3 years ago, he'd stormed out of that very same estate, rage boiling in his veins, betrayal pounding in his ears. His mother had placed the photograph in his hands, a blurry image, Elena with another man outside a cafe. Serena had discovered it, claimed she'd followed Elena for days. There had been whispers, lies, fuel for a fire already burning from within. He hadn't asked questions. He had confronted Elena with venom in his voice and accusation in his eyes. "I gave everything to you," he had shouted, "and I never asked for any of it if it came with your distrust," she had cried, voice trembling. "Ethan, I'm pregnant." But he hadn't heard that part. He remembered now. His heart ached with the realization. He hadn't heard the one thing that mattered. Now it was too late. Back in the present, the reception was beginning. Guests mingled, sipping wine, talking politely of legacies and business. The air smelled of roses and expensive cologne. Ethan entered slowly, his mind still fogged. The laughter and shallow condolences meant nothing to him. He scanned the room. Elena was near the back, quietly accepting condolences from a few elderly relatives. The triplets were seated at a small table with picture books and juice boxes. They looked so much like him. It felt surreal. Serena approached from behind and slid her hand into his. "You've been acting strange," she said with a tight smile. "Don't let her ruin today." He pulled away. "Today is my father's funeral, Serena. Don't talk like this is a brunch meeting." She crossed her arms. "You're acting like this is about her. We came to pay respects, remember? We leave tomorrow. The jet's ready." His voice dropped, cold and heavy. "You knew." "What?" He turned fully to her. "You knew she was pregnant when I left, didn't you?" Serena blinked too slowly. "You lied to me," he whispered. "You showed me that picture. You told me she was cheating." Her lips parted slightly. "I didn't lie. I showed you the truth. You chose to believe it." He looked at her, truly looked, and saw the woman he had followed into a storm of his own making. Beautiful, ambitious, calculating. And beside her, Elena. Tired, worn, but radiant in quiet dignity. He excused himself from Serena and walked toward Elena, his heart pounding so hard it echoed in his ears. "Elena," he said gently. She turned. Her eyes were tired, not surprised, not angry, just quiet. "I need to talk to you." She looked at him, then at the children. "Not here." She stepped away from the crowd, and he followed her to the side of the room. near the tall windows overlooking the garden where they had once danced barefoot during a summer party. "Why are you here?" she asked, not coldly, just firmly. "My father died," he replied uselessly. She exhaled. "You brought her with you. I didn't know you would be here." "Well, I didn't come for you." He swallowed hard. "Those children, Elena?" "They're mine," she said. "They were ours. But you made your choice." "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," she snapped, her voice breaking for the first time. "You looked me in the eye and turned away. You believed I was unfaithful before I could even explain. You left." He had no words. "I begged you to stop, to hear me. I told you I was pregnant and you just left." His eyes welled. "I remember now. I didn't let you finish." God, Elena?" "I raised them alone," she said, voice low. "I held their hands when they cried at night, when they asked why they didn't have a father. I told them you were far away, not that you chose someone else, not that you never came looking." He took a shaky breath. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I tried. Your mother cut me off. She threatened me, said if I ever showed up again, she'd drag me through court. Said your name would never be attached to my bastards. I didn't have the strength to fight all of you, not while pregnant with 3 children." Ethan clenched his fists. "She knew. She knew," Elena said. "And so did your father, eventually. He found out last year. He started visiting the children. Quietly. He wanted to fix what you'd done." A tear fell down Ethan's cheek. "He met them?" he asked, voice cracking. She nodded. "He was kind, regretful. He said he wanted them to know they were Langstons." Ethan collapsed into a chair nearby, face buried in his hands. "I can't fix this. I don't know where to begin." There was silence. Then her voice. "You don't begin with me. You begin with them. If you want anything, prove you deserve it. They're not trophies. They're little people. And they don't know you." He looked up, eyes shining with desperation. "Will you let me meet them?" Elena hesitated. Then, without a word, she walked away. Moments later, one of the boys approached him, holding a toy dinosaur. He looked up at Ethan with curious eyes. "You look like me," the boy said. "Are you my uncle?" Ethan blinked back tears and crouched slowly. "No," he whispered. I'm your dad." The boy stared at him, uncertain. "You made Mommy cry a lot," he said honestly. Ethan's breath caught. "I know," he replied, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." The boy nodded slowly, as if processing. Then softly, "You can sit with me, but only if you don't make her cry again." Ethan nodded. "I promise." Ethan didn't know what to say. Everything felt unreal. The soft chatter in the room continued. Elena stood by the window watching, always watching, protecting. The 2 other children, Ava and Lucas, stole glances at him, curious, guarded. Liam kept coloring, as if unfazed, as if this moment wasn't shifting the ground beneath their world. "You don't know how to color?" Liam asked with a slight smile, peering up at him. Ethan blinked and then chuckled softly. "Not in a long time. Mommy says grown-ups forget how," Liam said matter-of-factly, coloring the sun purple. "She's probably right," Ethan replied, picking up a blue crayon. There was something oddly peaceful in that moment. The weight of grief and regret softened by the voice of a child. But that calm wouldn't last. From across the room, Serena was watching, and she was furious. Her heels clacked sharply as she approached Elena at the window, her voice low and sharp. "So that's your game?" she hissed. "Show up at a funeral with his kids. What, to guilt him into crawling back?" Elena didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on Liam and Ethan. "I came to honor a man who loved his grandchildren." Serena laughed bitterly. "Don't play the saint. You disappeared for 3 years and suddenly reappear with 3 of them." Elena turned to face her. "I didn't disappear. I was erased." Ethan deserves better than a woman who uses children like weapons. Elena's voice lowered to a near whisper, trembling but strong. "Those children were never a weapon. They were a miracle. They saved me when he broke me, and I won't let you talk about them like they're pawns in your game." Serena took a step closer, her voice dark and venomous. "You think this changes anything? He's still mine. He left you. He left a lie," Elena said. "And now he's looking for the truth." Serena's eyes narrowed. "Be careful. You're not the only one who can play dirty." The threat hung in the air like poison. Meanwhile, Ethan was laughing softly, genuinely, for the first time in years. Liam had drawn a crooked castle with a flying dinosaur on top of it. "That's where we live now," Liam said. "In a castle with no stairs, just slides." "That sounds incredible," Ethan smiled. "Mommy works a lot," Liam added, unprompted. "Sometimes she cries at night when she thinks we're sleeping, but I hear." Ethan's heart twisted. His fingers froze around the crayon. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, to the child who didn't understand what that meant. Then Ava stood from her seat and walked over. "Are you really our dad?" Ethan looked up slowly. "Yes, I am." She stared at him for a long time, then reached into her tiny purse and pulled out a crumpled photo, one of a younger Ethan, clipped from a magazine cover. It had creases from being folded and unfolded too many times. "Mommy said we could look at it when we missed someone we never met." Ethan couldn't stop the tears this time. He looked across the room, past the crowd, past the sorrow, and met Elena's eyes. She looked tired, her expression unreadable. But then came the voice of the lawyer, sharp, commanding. "Mr. Langston's will requires the presence of all direct descendants and representatives for the final clause." People quieted. Serena straightened her dress. Ethan stood, confused, carrying Liam in his arms without even realizing it. They moved into the reading room. It was dim, lined with bookshelves and shadowed portraits of the Langston legacy. Ethan took a seat beside Serena, though not too close. Elena hesitated but followed the children, who had now become the center of attention. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began. "Frederick Langston made several amendments to his will in the last year. Most notable, the addition of 3 new beneficiaries, Liam, Ava, and Lucas Langston." The room gasped. Serena's nails dug into the armrest. Ethan sat motionless, stunned. "They are to receive shares of the Langston Trust, equal to the amount reserved for Ethan Langston." "What?" Serena blurted out. The lawyer held up a hand. "Furthermore, Mr. Langston left a letter to be read aloud." He unfolded it carefully and began reading. "To my son Ethan, if you're hearing this, it means I've gone where I can no longer undo the damage we've all caused. I failed you by letting others manipulate the truth. I knew about the children. I met them, and they gave me hope again. I tried to reach you, but I feared it was too late, that pride had swallowed your heart whole. If there's anything of me left in you, it must be this: do not repeat my mistake. Do not die alone, surrounded by riches, while the ones who matter are kept in the dark. Love them, Ethan. Love her. Make it right. Dad." Silence, deep and unbearable. Elena closed her eyes as the words pierced her chest. Ethan sat rigid, holding back tears, a war raging inside him. Pride against truth, shame against the desperate need to go back and undo what had already been done. Then Serena stood. "This is ridiculous. There's no proof." DNA results were submitted to the estate in advance. The lawyer interrupted coolly. "Mr. Langston requested them. The children are legally acknowledged as Ethan Langston's offspring." Elena turned toward the door, ushering the children out. She couldn't take more. Ethan followed. "Wait, Elena, please." She stopped in the hallway, not turning around. "I didn't come here for money," she said. "And I'm not here to reopen a door you slammed shut. But they are yours, and I won't stop you from being a father." He stepped closer. "I want to know them. I want to earn their love. Yours too, maybe, if there's anything left to fix." She finally looked at him, tears welling. "You want to fix something? Start by showing up. Every day, not just when it's convenient. Don't make promises to them you can't keep." "I won't," he said. "Not again." She studied him for a long moment, You still have a lot to prove, Ethan. I know, he said softly, but for the first time in years, I want to. And somewhere in the house, hidden in a drawer, was the last gift Frederick Langston had prepared. A small box. Inside, a photo of the triplets with him in the garden, smiling, and a note beneath it. For Ethan. The twins were already asleep. Only Ava remained awake, her wide eyes fixed on the ceiling. "Mommy," she whispered as Elena pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Are we really rich now?" Elena smiled faintly, brushing the hair from her daughter's forehead. "No, sweetheart. Money doesn't make us rich. Love does." Ava blinked. "Then, is Daddy poor?" Elena's heart caught in her throat. She leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Maybe he was, but I think he wants to change that now." Ava seemed satisfied with that answer, slowly drifting into sleep as Elena sat by the bedside a few minutes longer, just watching her children breathe. The storm outside hadn't yet started, but thunder rolled distantly over the hills. Down the hall, Ethan stood alone in his father's study. The smell of tobacco and aged paper clung to everything. He ran his fingers along the bookshelf, stopping at the drawer where the lawyer had said his father kept his journals. He opened it. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Ethan. None of them sent. He sat down in the leather chair and picked up the first. "Son, there isn't a day that goes by I don't think about what we could have had if we just talked to each other more. I see you in the news, and all I see is a man trying to outrun pain. Don't let it eat you like it ate me." Ethan closed his eyes. The weight of everything he'd ignored, everything he'd run from, settled heavily on his chest. He didn't hear the door creak open. "Elena," he said softly without turning. "I thought you'd be with the kids." "I was." Her voice was calm, but distant, tired. "They're asleep now." He turned slowly to face her. She looked around the room, at the firelight flickering against the portraits of Langston men. So many of them looking stern, unyielding, proud. And then at Ethan. "I used to imagine this place differently," she said. "When we were married, I thought I'd grow old here, raise our family with you here. But it never felt like home. Did it?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "Not once." She stepped forward, folding her arms tightly. Her eyes were glassy, but she refused to let them spill. "Do you even remember the last thing I said to you before you left?" He looked at her. "You told me you were pregnant." She nodded. "And you didn't even pause. You walked out the door." "I thought it was a lie," he admitted, his voice raw. "I thought you were trying to trap me. My mother, Serena, they made me believe it was someone else's child. That you were deceiving me." Her breath hitched. "And you didn't ask me. You didn't even look at me." "I was scared," he said. "Scared that everything we had wasn't real." She laughed softly, bitterly. "You were scared?" "Ethan, I was alone. I was pregnant with 3 babies and you left me in that cold apartment with nothing. I had to sell my wedding ring just to buy a crib." He stepped toward her, but she stepped back. "I know I don't deserve anything," he said quietly, "but I'm not asking for you to forget it. I'm asking for a chance to earn something back. Maybe not your love, but your trust. The right to stand next to my children and not be a stranger." She wiped at her eyes quickly. "It's not about you anymore, Ethan. It's about them. And you're not just fighting to win them, you're fighting to not hurt them." "I know," he said. "That's why I came back tonight instead of running again." Her silence said more than any words could. She looked around the study again. Then her eyes settled on a photo on the desk. Frederick with the triplets in the garden. One on his lap, one pulling at his watch, the third laughing in the grass. "You know he found me," she whispered. "Your father. A year ago. I was working at a flower shop. I didn't recognize him at first. He looked older. But he remembered me, and he asked to meet them." Ethan nodded. "The lawyer told me. He showed up every Sunday after that. Sat on the porch, let them braid his hair, brought them cookies." Her voice broke then, soft and unsteady. "He never asked for forgiveness. He just showed up." Ethan swallowed hard. "I wish I had." "You didn't," she said flatly. A pause. Then her voice dropped lower. I wanted to hate you, Ethan. God, I did. There were nights I held Lucas while he cried and wished you never existed. He flinched. I deserve that. But I don't hate you, she added, surprising them both. Because hate takes too much space. I had to save every inch of myself for those kids. I didn't have room for you anymore. Ethan took a step closer. I'm not asking you to make room again, he said. I'm asking you to let me stand in the doorway. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something softened, just a flicker. Elena, he said carefully, voice barely above a whisper. Can I see them tomorrow? Not just in passing. Can I take them somewhere? The park, maybe. Or ice cream. Just me and them. She hesitated. I'll bring them back whenever you say. I'll follow your rules. I just want to know what kind of shoes they like. What songs they sing. I missed everything. And I don't want to miss more. She looked down, biting the inside of her cheek, then finally nodded. Tomorrow, 1 hour, at the park across from St. Joseph's. His heart stuttered with relief. Thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. If you're late, if you cancel, if you make them cry, this ends. I understand. She left. Ethan stood alone in the study, hands trembling, heart pounding, and somewhere deep inside him, something unfamiliar began to grow. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the soil where hope could live. Ethan stood on the corner of St. Joseph's Park, hands stuffed into the pockets of his coat, eyes scanning the cobblestone path. He had arrived early, an hour early if he was honest. He hadn't wanted to risk being late. Not for this. Not when everything depended on it. The swings creaked lightly in the distance, pushed by the cold breeze. A few early joggers passed, earbuds in, oblivious to the weight of his heart. Every time a child's laugh echoed faintly through the morning air, he felt a pang of something. Longing, nerves, regret. Then he saw them. Elena crossing the street slowly, one hand holding Ava's, the other on Liam's shoulder. Lucas walked just slightly ahead, pretending not to be excited but failing miserably, his little backpack bouncing with every step. Ethan's breath caught. The triplets ran ahead as soon as they saw him, cautious but curious. Is this the park with the really big slide? Liam asked, eyes wide. Ethan smiled. That's the one. Lucas tugged at his coat. Can we go now? Ethan looked to Elena. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed. Not in anger, just protective. Watching, always watching. She gave him a small nod. Go ahead, he said, his voice breaking a little from emotion. I'll race you. He barely got the words out before the kids took off running. For the next hour, the air filled with something Ethan hadn't heard in years. His children's laughter. He pushed swings, caught them at the bottom of slides, helped them make a crooked fort from sticks and leaves. He learned that Liam loved dinosaurs. Lucas wanted to be a firefighter, and Ava had memorized the names of every planet in the solar system. Do you have a house with a pool? Ava asked him mid-slide. I do, Ethan replied carefully, but it's a little empty these days. You can fill it with rubber duckies, she said with a grin. That might actually be a great idea. Elena sat on a nearby bench, arms folded across her lap. She didn't interfere, didn't intrude, just observed, her expression unreadable. Occasionally, her eyes would soften at something the children said. Once she even smiled. It was Ethan who broke the moment. He sat down next to her as the kids ran off toward the sandbox, their coats dragging slightly in the damp earth. I forgot how loud kids are, he said with a sheepish chuckle. They don't come with volume control, she replied. A beat passed. Then he said, more quietly, thank you for this. I mean it. She kept her eyes on the children. Don't thank me yet. This is the easy part. I know. You're good with them, she admitted, surprising herself. I didn't expect that. I wasn't always, he said, voice low. I wasn't even good at being a husband. I didn't know how to listen. I thought being right meant being strong. She looked at him then, her eyes sharp. You weren't strong. You were afraid. He nodded slowly. I still am. But now I'm more afraid of not trying. The wind blew a few leaves across their feet. Ethan turned his head slightly toward her. I read the letters. The ones my father left. She tensed. I didn't know he was trying to reach me. I ignored every call, every invitation. I thought he just wanted to control me again. He changed, she said. In the end, I think he just wanted peace. Ethan looked down at his hands. I want that too. Not just with them, with you. Elijah, she said, her voice tightening with emotion. We can't go back. He swallowed hard. I know. You shattered something in me, in us, and I rebuilt it. But I rebuilt it without you. So don't come here thinking you can just pick up where we left off. I'm not, he whispered. I swear, Elena, I'm not asking you to go back. I'm asking if maybe, someday, you'd be willing to move forward. She looked at him, and for a split second, her face softened. But before she could respond, Ava came running toward them, panting and wide-eyed. Mommy, Lucas is crying. They rushed to the sandbox, where Lucas sat with dirt on his face, holding his knee and sobbing. I didn't see the rock, he whimpered. I fell. Ethan dropped to his knees. Let me see, buddy. Lucas hesitated, then let him gently lift the pant leg. Just a scrape, but red, fresh, and enough to frighten a 5-year-old. It's okay, Ethan murmured, dabbing the cut with a tissue from his pocket. You're brave. Brave like a firefighter. Remember? Lucas sniffled. You think so? I know so. Behind them, Elena knelt and placed her hand on her son's back. You're going to be okay, sweetheart, she whispered. We're right here. Ethan looked up and their eyes met again. It was the first time in 5 years that they'd comforted the same child at the same time. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't magical. It was real. A beginning. Later, when the hour had passed, Elena rose to her feet and called for the kids. Time to go. A chorus of whines followed, but she stayed firm. Say goodbye. Lucas turned to Ethan. Will we see you again? Ethan smiled softly. If your mom says it's okay, I'd really like that. They hugged him, tentative, awkward, but real. When they were gone, Ethan stayed seated on the park bench, the imprint of their tiny arms still on his jacket. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if Elena would ever let him all the way back in. Each morning, he'd wake up before sunrise, check his phone for any message from Elena. Never expecting one, but always hoping. And each afternoon, he'd find himself at St. Joseph's Park, watching the children play from a respectful distance unless Elena waved him over. She didn't always. But when she did, it was enough to keep him breathing. On the 4th day, the sky was tinted gold as the sun dipped low, scattering warm light over the park's fading leaves. The triplets were on the merry-go-round, spinning until they fell into giggles and dizzy collapses. Elena sat on a bench, arms wrapped around herself. Not because of the cold, but as if bracing against a memory that wouldn't let go. Ethan sat beside her. She didn't stop him. I used to imagine this, he said quietly. Sundays, you, me, them. She didn't reply. He looked down at his hands. But in my version, I wasn't the outsider. You put yourself outside, she murmured, her voice tight. I know. She glanced at him, really looked, and something passed through her eyes that was almost harder to bear than anger, disappointment, or maybe pain that hadn't quite healed. I brought them here, she said after a long silence. Back to this city, back to this park, because your father asked me to. He turned sharply to her. What? He wrote to me a few weeks before he died, she said, her gaze fixed on the children. Said he didn't have long, that he wanted the family together. One last time, even if it was in grief. Ethan's throat tightened. He knew I'd be at the funeral. He hoped you would be. He shook his head slowly. He tried harder than I ever did. He did, she said, without cruelty. Another silence stretched between them. Then softly she added, but he still didn't tell you about us. I asked him not to. Ethan looked at her, stunned. I wasn't ready, she admitted. I thought if you knew, if you came back just for them, it would never be real. It would always be guilt, regret." His voice cracked. "And now?" She turned to face him fully, her eyes shimmering but firm. "Now, I don't care why you came. I care what you do next." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Then I'll prove it. Every day." Her gaze didn't waver. "I'm not looking for perfection, Ethan. I just need consistency, stability, for them. Not grand gestures, not promises that disappear when things get hard." "I'll be here," he said, barely a whisper. "Even if you don't want me, I'll be here for them. I swear it." She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once and stood. "Come on," she said. "They'll want to walk home with you." The triplets cheered when he joined them. They told him stories from preschool, asked if he'd ever eaten a worm. He hadn't. And made him promise he'd come again tomorrow. And when they reached the apartment building, something happened that nearly broke him. Liam took his hand. Just for a second. No one said anything, but Elena saw it, and her eyes lowered, as if afraid to feel too much. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Elena stood in the kitchen, washing dishes slowly, the sound of running water blending with the quiet hum of the fridge. She didn't hear Ethan walk back in. He had returned to drop off a jacket Ava left in his car. But when he saw her standing there, alone, silent, surrounded by the shadows of a life she had built without him, he couldn't leave. He cleared his throat. "I brought this." She turned. "Oh, thanks. I should go," he added, stepping back. But she hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, then to the floor. Finally, her voice, soft. "Do you want some tea?" He stopped. His heart thudded. "Only if you're having some too." She nodded and turned back to the kettle. They sat at the tiny kitchen table, mugs in hand, surrounded by a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just fragile. "I used to dream about this," he said, echoing her words from earlier. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Then why did you give it up so easily?" He looked down. "I thought I wasn't enough, that you deserved more than what I could give." "You were enough," she said. "You just didn't believe it." He nodded slowly. "I do now." "Do you really?" she asked. "Because I don't need the man who left me. I don't need the CEO or the one who comes in suits with answers and flowers. I need someone who stays, who gets his hands dirty, who shows up when the kids are sick, when the rent is due, when life gets ugly. I can be that man," he said, voice shaking. "I want to be." She looked at him, and her expression cracked just a little. "I didn't stop loving you," she whispered. "Even when I hated you." His breath hitched. "I would hold Ava in one arm, Lucas in the other, and Liam crying at my feet. And I'd think, where is he? Why doesn't he care?" And even in that moment, part of me still wished you'd walk through the door. "I'm sorry," he choked. "God, I'm so sorry." She wiped her eyes, angry at herself for the tears. "Don't be sorry. Just mean it." "I do." Then a sudden knock at the door startled them both. It was Serena. She stood there, radiant and sharp, her lipstick perfect, eyes full of poison. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "How cozy." Elena froze. Ethan stood, already tense. "What are you doing here?" he asked, stepping in front of Elena instinctively. Serena smiled sweetly. "Well, darling, I thought you might want your things back." She stepped aside, and behind her was a man holding 2 suitcases. Ethan's suitcases. "Wait," Elena said, stunned. "You were living with her?" Ethan turned to her, panicked. "Not anymore. Not since the funeral. I left." Serena let out a laugh. "Oh, he left, all right. Took off in the middle of the night like a thief. Guess he found himself a new fairy tale to chase." "Enough," Ethan said sharply. But Serena leaned closer, her voice like silk and venom. "Just remember, Elena, men like him always come back, but not always for you." And with that, she turned and walked down the hall, her heels echoing against the tiles. Elena stood still, her hand on the kitchen counter, her breath caught in her throat. I'm not going back to her, Ethan said quickly. That chapter's done. Over. Elena stared at the bags. Then make sure she knows it. And make sure I never have to see her on my doorstep again. He nodded. I promise. But her eyes were no longer soft. Something had shifted again. The fragile thread between them pulled tight, too tight. I need time, she whispered and walked away. He had thought that leaving Serena was the most definitive step he could take toward a new beginning. But Elena's eyes earlier, how they hardened the second she saw the bags, told him something different. That action spoken too late could still sound like lies. The next morning, the sun rose without warmth. Ethan stood outside the flower shop where Elena worked. The sign in the window still read closed, but he saw her inside, arranging sunflowers and lavender in a glass vase. Her movements were slow, precise. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot, a pencil tucked behind her ear. He didn't knock right away. He just watched, trying to memorize the way her fingers moved, the small furrow of focus between her brows. Then she saw him. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. He opened the door slowly, the bell chiming above his head. She didn't stop arranging the flowers. I'm not here to talk about Serena, he said softly. I wasn't asking, she replied, not looking up. He stepped closer, but not too close. I didn't tell her where I was. I didn't invite her. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, she interrupted, eyes still on the flowers. Even if it wasn't intentional, it still landed. He nodded, accepting that. She finally looked at him. I'm tired, Ethan, she whispered. I'm tired of being the one who's always waiting to see if you're going to show up for real, or just pass through. I'm not passing through, he said, voice shaking. I swear to you, I'm here. This time, I'm staying. She exhaled slowly, then reached for another flower, white lily. My mom used to say, she began almost to herself, that grief makes liars out of everyone. People say things in their pain that they can't live up to later. I'm not grieving, he said, stepping closer. I was grieving the man I thought I was supposed to be. The version of me who lived in skyscrapers and boardrooms and forgot what home meant. But that man is dead, Elena. I don't want his life back. Her eyes searched his, and for a moment, she softened. But then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, hesitated, and answered. Hi, yes. This is Elena Langston. Oh my God. Her hand flew to her mouth. Ethan froze. What's wrong? She turned pale. It's the school. There was an incident. Lucas, he collapsed on the playground. He's being taken to the hospital. She didn't wait. She dropped the flowers, grabbed her coat, and was out the door before he could process. Wait, I'll drive, he said, chasing after her. Get in. They sped through the city streets, Ethan's knuckles white on the steering wheel. Elena sat beside him in silence, her hands trembling in her lap. The tears hadn't come yet, just shock. Too much shock. I should have stayed with them this morning, she whispered. He said his tummy hurt, but I thought he just didn't want to go. He'll be okay, Ethan said, trying to believe it himself. He's strong. The hospital came into view like a sudden monolith of glass and steel. They rushed in, voices rising, the smell of antiseptic thick in the air. Lucas Langston, Elena said breathlessly at the front desk. 5 years old. He was just brought in. The nurse nodded. He's in pediatrics, room 412. The doctor is with him now. They raced to the elevator, then down the hallway. When they opened the door to the room, they found Lucas lying small and pale in a bed too big for him. A nurse adjusting the monitors around him. Mommy, he whispered. Elena flew to his side, tears finally breaking loose. She kissed his forehead, held his tiny hand. What happened? She asked, voice trembling. The doctor entered, a young man with tired eyes and a clipboard. Lucas had a sudden drop in blood sugar and collapsed. We've stabilized him, but we're running tests to rule out anything deeper, anemia, diabetes, even a rare enzyme disorder. He'll need to stay overnight for observation. Elena nodded numbly, her fingers never letting go of her son's hand. Ethan stood behind her, helpless. "Can I stay too?" he asked. Elena looked up, and something broke in her face. Fear, raw and exposed. "I can't do this alone," she whispered. And for the first time, she let him hold her as she cried. They sat in that hospital room all night. They told Lucas stories, played with finger puppets, and when he finally drifted to sleep, they sat on opposite sides of the bed and stared at each other. "I used to think hospitals were the worst places in the world," Ethan murmured. "They're not," Elena said softly. "They're where people fight for second chances." They didn't speak after that. Elena sat across from him, curled slightly in the vinyl armchair, her eyes red from crying but dry now. She hadn't said much since the last update. The doctor stepped in, clipboard in hand, his expression unreadable. Ethan stood instinctively. Elena straightened up, gripping the armrest. "Well?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor offered a calm, reassuring nod. "Lucas has a form of hypoglycemia that's manageable with diet and routine monitoring. It's not life-threatening. You'll need to keep track of his sugar levels, avoid long periods without food, and come in for follow-ups. But he's going to be okay." Elena covered her mouth with both hands. Her body shook with quiet relief, tears spilling out in silence. Ethan reached for her without thinking, his hand resting gently on her back as she wept. "I'll get the nurse to bring you the paperwork," the doctor added. "He can probably go home this afternoon." They were alone again. Elena wiped her face and leaned back, exhaling shakily. Ethan looked at her, voice trembling. "I was scared I was going to lose him. Before I even had a chance to really know him." She didn't speak. He stared at Lucas, who was still asleep, one hand clinging to the stuffed bear Ethan had picked up in the hospital gift shop. "I kept thinking, if he didn't wake up, if something happened, the last thing he'd know about me was that I wasn't there when it counted, just like before." Elena turned toward him slowly. Her voice was soft, but unflinching. "Ethan, I've never needed you to be perfect, but I need to believe you'll stay." "I will," he said quickly. "Elena, I swear, No," she stopped him gently, her eyes fixed on his. "Not with words, not with promises. I need to feel it. I need to see it. Over time. Over good days and bad ones." "I'll give you time," he whispered. "As much as you need." "I'm not saying this so you fight harder," she said, folding her arms across her chest like armor. "I'm saying it because I can't survive that kind of heartbreak again. Neither can they." He nodded. "I understand." She looked back at Lucas, her expression softening. "You should be the one to take him home," she said, surprising him. Ethan blinked. "Me? You need to start somewhere." His breath caught in his chest. "Thank you." She didn't answer. She just stood and began gathering Lucas's things. His little shoes, his coat, the worn-out blanket he never slept without. That afternoon, Ethan carried Lucas out of the hospital in his arms, the boy half awake, head resting against his shoulder. In the car, Elena sat in the back seat with the twins, Ava clutching her mother's hand tightly, Liam pressing his face to the window. Lucas stirred softly in Ethan's arms. "Daddy," Ethan smiled, voice thick. "I'm here, buddy. Can we still go to the park tomorrow?" He kissed his forehead. "We'll go wherever you want." That night, after the kids were settled back home, Ethan stood by the door with Elena, unsure of what to do next. The hallway light flickered above them. There was something quiet, heavy in the moment, like neither of them wanted to say goodnight just yet, but both knew they had to. "Do you want to come in?" she asked suddenly. Ethan's heart jumped. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Just for a minute." He followed her in. The apartment was dimly lit, the air still holding the scent of soup from dinner and lemon-scented cleaning spray. The silence between them was no longer hostile. It was cautious, tender. Elena walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. She handed it to him. "I still remember the way you used to hum in your sleep," she said suddenly, not looking at him. "Like a broken lullaby." He smiled faintly. "You said it drove you crazy." I lied. I liked it. She finally looked at him. I used to fall asleep listening to you breathe. And when you left, her voice cracked, then steadied. Silence became the loudest sound I knew. Ethan reached out, his fingers brushing her wrist. She didn't pull away. Elena, I don't deserve you. No, she said gently. But maybe, if you keep showing up, one day you will. The front door buzzed. They both froze. She walked to the intercom and pressed it. A pause, then a voice. Delivery for Serena Lee. Ethan's blood ran cold. Elena turned toward him slowly, her face unreadable. She's still sending things to your name. I didn't ask for it. I don't want anything from her. I believe you, Elena said. But you need to end it, Ethan. Publicly, clearly, completely. I will, he said. First thing tomorrow. Good, she whispered. Because this family doesn't need any more shadows. Only light. And with that, she opened the door, letting him out. He had put off this conversation for too long. The building loomed above him, tall and sterile, like the life he had once built inside it. Expensive, hollow, and cold. He wasn't afraid of Serena, not anymore, but he feared the version of himself that had once belonged to this place. The man who had walked away from his wife, from his children, from himself. The elevator doors opened, and Serena stood there, barefoot, wrapped in a silk robe, holding a glass of red wine, though it was barely past 9 in the morning. Well, she said, eyeing him, if it isn't the prodigal husband. I need to talk, Ethan said flatly. She smirked, stepping aside. You always do when things fall apart. He entered the apartment he once called home and immediately felt the distance. The furniture gleamed, untouched. The air was thick with expensive perfume and something sour beneath it. I'm returning the keys, he said, placing them on the marble counter. I've already canceled the joint account. I'll transfer everything that belongs to you. She raised a brow. Just like that. Just like that. Serena stepped closer, her voice lowering. You think you're in love with her again? After all this time? After the way she humiliated you? No, Ethan said calmly. I never stopped loving her. I just convinced myself I had. Serena's jaw tensed. I stayed with you because I was angry, he continued. Angry at her, at myself, at everything I didn't understand. But I see it now. You never wanted me to be happy. You just wanted me to be yours. I gave you loyalty, Serena snapped. You gave me lies. Her eyes narrowed. He stepped closer. You knew she was pregnant. You knew those kids were mine. And you said nothing. She would have ruined your life. She was my life. Serena's voice shook, almost trembling with the first edge of fear. You don't know what she's capable of. She's capable of forgiveness. Something you'll never understand. Silence. He walked to the door. You're not coming back, she said, almost like a question. No, I've already left. And this time he meant it. When Ethan stepped back into the city streets, the air felt different, brighter, as if he'd finally removed something toxic from his lungs. He didn't return to the inn. Instead, he drove to the bakery near Elena's apartment and bought 3 chocolate croissants. He remembered she used to crave them at midnight. Then, almost on instinct, he bought a 4th. For himself. He arrived at her place just as she was helping the kids into their jackets. I thought I'd walk them to school, she said when she opened the door. I was hoping I could come with you, he offered, holding up the paper bag like a peace offering. Ava's eyes lit up. Croissants. Elena hesitated, then opened the door wider. The walk was short, but meaningful. Lucas clung to his hand. Liam pointed out birds. Ava talked about the solar system again, and Ethan listened like every word was new. When they reached the school gates, Elena turned to him. They'll be out at 2. I'll be here, he said, smiling. As the kids ran toward the door, Ethan touched her arm gently. I spoke to Serena. It's over. Completely. She nodded, her lips parting slightly as if she didn't know what to say. Do you believe me? He asked. I want to. That's enough for now. That afternoon, He was waiting on the steps when the kids ran out of school and into his arms. The weight of them, the chaos, the laughter. It felt like life was finally speaking his language again. Later, at the apartment, Elena let him stay for dinner. It was pasta night, and the kitchen was a whirlwind of boiling water, spilled tomato sauce, and children's voices bouncing off the walls. Ethan wore an apron and did everything wrong. Overcooked the noodles, dropped a spoon, but the kids loved it. After the meal, as they sat on the couch watching cartoons, Elena came to stand beside him. "They trust you," she said softly. He looked at her. "Do you?" She hesitated, and then she reached out, took his hand, and pressed something into his palm. It was a photograph, one he had never seen before. Elena, pregnant, alone, standing in front of a window with her hand resting on her belly. A quiet strength in her eyes, but pain too. "I used to keep this by my bed," she whispered, "so I wouldn't forget why I had to stay strong." Ethan stared at the photo, breath caught in his throat. "I want you to keep it now," she said, "so you never forget what you walked away from." "I won't," he whispered. Their eyes met. No kiss, no promises, just a beginning. Days passed, and for the first time in 5 years, the word routine began to mean something different. Ethan walked the children to school, brought groceries without being asked, helped Liam with his alphabet and Ava with her solar system project. He picked up soup when Elena had headaches, wiped muddy shoes, fixed a broken drawer with his sleeves rolled up and no complaints. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't grand, but it was steady, and that steadiness began to rebuild something. But peace has a way of waking fear, especially when it feels too good, too fragile. One night, a week after Lucas's hospital scare, Elena sat on the floor of her bedroom, back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest. The children were asleep. The apartment was quiet. Ethan had kissed their foreheads goodnight and said, "I'll see you in the morning," but something in her wouldn't let her sleep. The silence wasn't comforting anymore. It was a memory, too loud, too cruel. So when the knock came at the door a little past midnight, her breath stopped. She opened it carefully. Ethan stood there in the hallway, rain on his jacket, something tight and panicked in his eyes. "I need to talk to you," he said, out of breath. "I know it's late. Elijah, what happened?" He hesitated. "I got a letter from my mother." Elena stiffened. She sent it through her lawyer. "Apparently she's contesting my father's will." "What?" Elena whispered. "She's claiming I was manipulated, that the children were never proven as mine. She's demanding a full paternity reevaluation and threatening to challenge the inheritance." Elena leaned against the wall, her face pale. "I thought we were past this." "I did too," he said, voice shaking. "But she's desperate. She's trying to scare us. She's using the kids to pull me back into her control." Elena's voice dropped. "If she files a claim, we could be dragged into court. They'll question everything." "I won't let that happen," Ethan said quickly. "I already hired a lawyer. I'll fight it, every part of it. But she'll come for me," Elena finished. He stepped closer. "I won't let her touch you, or them. I swear to you." She looked at him, the fear returning to her eyes. "You don't understand what that woman is capable of. She tried to bury me once. Do you think I don't remember?" "I know," he whispered. "And that's why I'm here, because I won't let her hurt you again." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I can't do this again, Ethan. I can't watch my children be dragged through questions and blood tests and lawyers and cameras. I fought so hard to keep them safe. We'll protect them, together." "You say that now," she said, her voice rising. "But what happens when she pushes harder? When it gets ugly? Will you stay this time, or will she poison you again?" He stepped forward and reached for her hand, gently pulling her into his arms. "I'm not that man anymore," he murmured. "You've seen it. You've felt it." Elena didn't move at first, but she didn't pull away either. He tightened his hold, resting his forehead against hers. "I've lived my entire life for people who wanted to control me, for a legacy that meant nothing. But this," his voice broke, this is what matters. You, them, us. Elena closed her eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, he breathed. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. And in that moment, her arms lifted slowly and wrapped around him. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was surrender to the possibility that love, real love, could be built again even after being shattered. They stood in silence, rain tapping against the windows, the world outside threatening to pull them apart again. The children played in the living room, their voices light and unbothered. But Elena moved slower, quieter, as she prepared breakfast. Her fingers trembled slightly when she stirred the oatmeal. Ethan noticed but didn't speak yet. When the kids sat down at the table, Ethan gently tapped her arm. She followed him to the hallway, where the murmurs of laughter from the other room faded behind the wall. She'll try to use everything against us, he said softly. Our past, your absence from the estate, even the fact that you kept them from me. Elena looked at him sharply. I didn't keep them from you. You left. I know, he said quickly, holding up his hand. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying my mother will twist it all. She'll find cracks and rip them open. Elena leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly over her chest. And you still think we can win? I know we can. But what if we don't? She asked, her voice suddenly raw. What if she takes custody or, her throat caught, tries to prove I'm unstable or not fit, or that I manipulated you into staying? He stepped forward and gently held her face in his hands. Listen to me, he whispered. There is nothing she can take from us that I won't fight to get back. You are not alone anymore. Elena's lip quivered. I don't want them to see us fall apart, she whispered. I don't want them to see lawyers and courtrooms and you broken again. I want them to feel safe. And they will, he promised, because we'll face this the way we should have from the beginning. Together. She nodded once, and then her arms came around him. He held her close, pressing his lips into her hair. Later that day, they met with Ethan's attorney. Elena sat silently while the lawyer explained the process. DNA confirmation would be reaffirmed through legal channels, and a custody hearing could be avoided if Ethan filed a countermotion declaring full acknowledgement of paternity and family intent. You'd have to submit a sworn declaration of domestic commitment, the lawyer said, essentially proving that you are now operating as a family unit. Elena's eyes flicked to Ethan. What does that mean? She asked carefully. It means living together, the lawyer said. Stability. Shared finances, childcare responsibility, no ambiguity, and proof that the children are in a healthy, unified household. Ethan reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. I'll move in tonight. Her breath caught. Ethan, no pressure. Just let me be with you. Let me prove I'm serious. Not just in front of a court, but to you. And the kids. She swallowed hard. I'm not ready to sleep beside you, she said honestly. I'll sleep on the couch, he replied, not missing a beat. Hell, I'll sleep in the hallway if I have to. Just let me be home. After a long pause, she nodded. Just once. That night, he arrived with a single duffel bag and a nervous smile. The children screamed when they saw him, tugging on his sleeves, dragging him around the apartment to show him drawings, toys, pillow forts. Elena stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching it all with a cautious softness. Later, as she folded blankets on the couch, he stepped beside her. You don't have to do that, he said gently. I've got it. I know, she replied, but I'm used to doing things alone. He reached for the blanket she was holding, their hands brushing. You don't have to be anymore. She didn't pull away. They stood there, barely touching, as the light from the lamp cast warm shadows around them. And in the silence, Elena finally whispered what had been lingering between them for days. I'm scared of needing you again. His voice trembled. Then let me be the one thing you don't have to fear. She looked up, her eyes full of old wounds and new hope. Then slowly she nodded. I'll try. He smiled, a little broken, a little whole. That's more than enough. And for the first time in years, he slept under the same roof as the family he lost. Still outside their hearts, but no longer a stranger in their home. By morning, he was already in the kitchen, trying to make breakfast before anyone else woke up. He didn't know how she liked her coffee anymore. He didn't know what the kids preferred for cereal. So he tried his best: burnt toast, overpoured milk, and eggs that came out more like rubber than breakfast. When Elena walked in, still in her robe, hair loosely falling around her shoulders, she stopped at the doorway, eyebrows raised at the disaster unfolding on the stove. "I was experimenting," Ethan said sheepishly, holding up a very blackened piece of toast. Elena's lips twitched. "I can see that." She walked over and took the spatula from his hand, guiding him away from the pan like she was rescuing a child from fire. "Step 1, she said, reaching for a clean skillet. "Low heat." He stood beside her, arms crossed, watching her hands move effortlessly. There was something familiar and comforting in the way she cracked the eggs with one hand, humming under her breath like she used to. "I used to love watching you cook," he said quietly. She glanced at him but didn't answer. "I'd wake up early just to sit at the kitchen table," he continued. "Pretend I was reading something important. But really, I just liked the way your hair looked in the morning, the way you moved, like the whole house breathed when you were awake." Elena's hands stilled on the pan. Then she turned down the flame and faced him. "You said things like that before, back when it was easy to say them." He nodded, his smile fading. "I know. You said you loved me," she added, voice tight. "But then you let other people's voices get louder than mine. You chose lies over asking me once. Just once. If I was telling the truth. I hated myself for that every single day," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You were the only thing that felt real, and I destroyed it." The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of years they couldn't get back. Then a soft voice broke through it. "Mommy, Daddy." They both turned. Lucas stood at the doorway, rubbing his eyes, hair tousled, his favorite stuffed bear dragging along the floor behind him. "Did you sleep here, Daddy?" Ethan knelt down, smiling gently. "Yeah, buddy, I did." Lucas padded over to him and curled into his arms without hesitation. "I like when you're here." Elena's gaze lingered on them, something behind her eyes breaking. Later that afternoon, when the kids were at school and the apartment was quiet again, she invited Ethan into the small corner of the living room that had become her writing nook. "I need to show you something," she said. She pulled a dusty box from beneath the desk and handed it to him. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all in her handwriting, all addressed to him. "I wrote them after you left," she said. "Never mailed them, never had the courage to, but I needed to say the words out loud, somewhere, even if you'd never hear them." Ethan's fingers trembled as he picked one up. "I don't know why I keep thinking today will be the day you show up. Maybe because Lucas said his first word. It was light. Isn't that strange? That even he sees something bright when I'm still choking in the dark." His eyes burned. He reached for another. "I folded your shirt today, the one you left on the chair. I still sleep with it some nights, not because it smells like you anymore, but because it reminds me I wasn't crazy, that it was real once." He looked at her, broken. "You carried all this alone. I had no choice. I should have come back," he whispered. She shook her head. "You couldn't. Not then. You weren't ready. I don't think I was either." He set the letters down and took her hand. "Do you want me to read them?" "Eventually," she said. "But for now, just knowing they're not lost is enough." The doorbell rang. They both startled. Elena walked to the door, cautious, and opened it. A delivery man stood there with a white envelope. No flowers, no message, just her name. Elena took it, heart pounding, and closed the door behind her. She stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a folded piece of legal stationery and a single printed sentence. "We're not done, CL." Her face went pale. Ethan stepped beside her. "What is it?" he asked. She handed it to him silently. He read it once, then again. His hands curled into fists. My mother. She won't stop, Elena said quietly. No, he agreed. But neither will I. Their eyes met. Something between fear and defiance passed between them, like a thread refusing to snap. I'll protect you, he said again, firmer this time, with everything I have. And this time she didn't just nod. We're not done. He stood at the kitchen window long after the children had gone to sleep, watching the streetlights blur behind the rain-drenched glass. His mother's words weren't just a threat. They were a promise, a war declaration. Elena entered quietly, wrapped in a cardigan, her expression unreadable. She won't back down, will she? She asked. No, Ethan said without turning. She won't. He finally looked at her. She's trying to scare you. It's personal now. It's always been personal, Elena replied softly, crossing her arms. She never forgave me for loving you. He stepped closer. She never forgave me for choosing you. But you didn't choose me, she whispered. Not when it counted. The words hit harder than she intended, and her eyes softened instantly. I'm sorry. That was cruel. No, Ethan murmured. It was true. A beat of silence passed between them. I think I know why she's really doing this, he added quietly. Elena watched him, waiting. He took a breath. My father, he said. He found out about the children, and he changed the will. He gave them his name, his blessing. That would have enraged her. She never wanted him to acknowledge any part of my life that didn't follow her rules. She doesn't care about the money, Elena said, realization dawning. She cares about control. She sees them as symbols of betrayal, proof she couldn't shape me into what she wanted. Elena's eyes filled with quiet dread. And she'll punish them for it. Ethan took her hand. We won't let her. How? She asked, her voice shaking. How do we fight someone who has more lawyers, more power, more connections? What if she's recording us, watching the kids? What if this isn't just legal, Ethan? What if it's dangerous? I'll go to the press, he said suddenly. Elena's eyes widened. She's obsessed with reputation, he continued. If I expose the truth, what she's done, how she manipulated us, covered up the children's existence, she'll fold. She'll never survive public scrutiny. You'd go public? She asked. I'd burn everything down if it meant keeping you safe. She blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. That's a lot. I know. What if it backfires? He hesitated, then said quietly, Then at least I'll know I didn't stay silent again. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something different. Not the boy who had once been too proud, too easily swayed, but the man who had been humbled, broken, and rebuilt by love and loss. Her voice softened. Before you do anything, there's something I need to tell you. He waited, watching her shift her weight nervously. My parents, she said. They wanted me to come back after you left. Back to Chicago. My father offered to take care of everything, apartment, school for the kids, therapy. But I said no. Why? She looked down. Because some part of me still believed you'd come back. That the man I married still existed under all the noise. So I stayed. I struggled. I broke. But I stayed. Ethan's throat closed. I don't deserve that kind of faith, he whispered. Maybe not, she said. But it's what brought us here. He stepped closer, placing his forehead gently against hers. I promise you, Elena, I won't waste it. Her hands gripped his shirt tightly, and she closed her eyes. Then do what you need to do, she said. But do it with care. Not just for me, but for them. Later that night, Ethan sat in the dim light of the living room and began to write. A statement, a declaration, a confession. Each word carved from guilt and clarity, from every sleepless night and every second he had missed of his children's lives. When he was done, he read it aloud under his breath. Asterisk, my name is Ethan Langston. For years, I let silence speak louder than truth. I abandoned the woman I loved and the children I didn't know existed, because I was too weak to ask questions and too proud to admit I was wrong. My mother, Claudia Langston, has tried to erase them, has tried to silence their existence for the sake of reputation. Not anymore. These are my children. This is the woman I failed. And this is the family I will protect with everything I have left, even if it costs me everything else. He looked toward the hallway where Elena and the kids slept, and for the first time in years, he felt worthy of calling it home. He looked over at Elena, who stood by the sink, watching him. "It's done," he said softly. She didn't respond right away. She just nodded, eyes unreadable. The children were still asleep. The world hadn't caught up yet. And then it did. Within an hour, Ethan's phone began to buzz. Incessantly. Texts, missed calls, notifications. He turned it over on the table, not daring to look yet. He poured himself a cup of coffee, hands unsteady. "I feel like I just set fire to everything I built," he muttered. Elena took the seat across from him. "No," she said. "You just set fire to what was never real." He looked at her. "I don't know what happens next. I think that's the point," she said quietly. Just then, the doorbell rang. Both of them froze. Elena stood first, cautious, her eyes darting toward the hallway where the kids slept. Ethan followed her to the door. He opened it. Courier. No uniform, no logo. Just a man in black holding a sealed white envelope. "For Mr. Langston," he said. "Urgent." Ethan took it with a nod, his stomach already sinking. The man left without another word. Elena closed the door. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside, a single legal page, an emergency court order. His mother had filed for temporary injunction, demanding a cease and desist on public statements, alleging defamation, emotional distress, and intentional family sabotage. Attached, a list of witnesses, including former staff from the Langston estate, a PR official, and he blinked. "Marianne," he whispered. Elena stepped closer. "Who?" "She was the housekeeper. She used to help take care of me when I was a boy." His voice faltered. "She used to bring me soup when I was sick. She knew me." Elena said nothing. Her eyes were steady. Ethan's hands tightened around the paper. "This is how she works. She surrounds herself with loyalty she bought and fed for decades. She'll turn them all. She's trying to drown you in shadows before the truth can breathe," Elena murmured. "I'm not backing down," he said. "But if this reaches the kids—" "It won't," she interrupted. He looked at her, surprised by the firmness in her voice. "I won't let it," she said. "If I fought without you for 5 years, I'll fight even harder now that you're here." There was a long silence. Then Ethan whispered, "She'll go after you too. She'll dig into your past. Every decision, every moment you struggled. Let her," Elena said. "There's nothing she'll find that I haven't already survived." The rest of the day passed in fragments. Calls from the lawyer, statements from friends, rumors circling online. Half the board of Ethan's former company had already scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss his mental clarity. But through it all, the children were kept blissfully unaware. They colored in the living room. They built pillow forts. They asked about lunch, not lawsuits. And that night, when Ethan sat alone on the balcony, Elena brought him a blanket and 2 mugs of tea. "I never knew how quiet the sky could be," he murmured, watching the stars. "It always feels louder when you're afraid," she said. He turned to her. "I'm not afraid of her anymore." Elena nodded. "Then what are you afraid of?" He didn't speak at first. Then, "That I'll lose all of this just when I finally understand how much it matters." Her hand reached for his. "You won't. Because I'll fight? Because we will," she whispered. A gust of wind moved past them, cold and sharp, and somewhere far away, in her corner of the city, Claudia Langston sat at her pristine marble desk, fingers laced under her chin. She read the statement again, then slowly, deliberately, smiled. "Let the boy think he's winning," she said to the silence. Tycoon's secret family. Ethan Langston's confession shocks elite circles. Langston matriarch responds with legal fury. Corporate titan or reckless romantic? Elena turned off the TV before the kids could see it. But the damage was spreading. The front of their apartment building was now cluttered with camera crews, reporters, and strangers with cell phones. Elena had to pull Ava back from the window. "I don't like this," Ava whispered, holding her stuffed rabbit tightly. "Why are they outside?" "It's okay, sweetheart," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They're just confused." Ethan was pacing the hallway, phone glued to his ear. "I don't care if she has 5 lawyers. I want the judge to hear our side today." He hung up and rubbed his temples, the weight of the world pressing hard into his spine. Elena watched him. "You okay?" He looked at her, exhaustion darkening his eyes. "No, but I will be." She stepped forward, placing her hand on his chest. "You're shaking. I've never had to protect something this fragile before," he whispered. "And I don't know if I'm doing it right." "You're here," she said. "That's right enough for now." There was a knock at the door, sharp, deliberate. They froze. Ethan stepped in front of her, shielding instinctively, and opened it. A woman stood there, not his mother, not a lawyer, Marianne, the former housekeeper, the woman who once hummed lullabies in the Langston estate kitchen and snuck cookies to Ethan as a child. She looked older now, eyes heavier, shoulders lower. Ethan blinked. "Marianne." She gave a tight smile. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "I do," he said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" "I came to say I'm sorry," she said softly. Elena stepped forward, confused. "You're listed as a witness in your mother's injunction." "I know," Marian said, her voice trembling. "She contacted me weeks ago, told me to lie, to say Elena was unstable, that the kids weren't yours, that she was dangerous." Ethan's jaw clenched. "And you agreed?" "I said I would," she whispered, "but I never meant to go through with it." "Why come now?" Elena asked, folding her arms tightly. Marianne's eyes began to well. "Because I saw your letter," she said to Ethan. "And I saw your face. I saw him. The boy who used to sneak into the garden because the mansion made him feel small." Ethan's throat tightened. "She tried to convince me you were sick, that Elena was manipulating you. But I know your mother. I know how she punishes people who love what she doesn't approve of." Marian stepped into the doorway, voice trembling. "I want to testify for you, for the truth." Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he stepped forward and wrapped her in a hug so sudden. She gasped. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." She sniffed. "Don't thank me yet. You're going to need more than one voice to drown her out." Ethan pulled back, determination burning behind his eyes. "Then we'll get them." Elena watched the two of them, past and present colliding like two halves of a life finally finding each other again. Later that evening, the apartment was calm again. The reporters gone for now, the blinds drawn. Elena stood in the hallway watching Ethan tuck in Liam, then Lucas. Ava had already fallen asleep, curled up with her rabbit. When he emerged, his voice was quieter. "I used to think I was a good man," he said. She tilted her head. "And now, I think I want to become one." She smiled faintly. "That's better." They walked toward the living room, shoulder to shoulder. "She's not finished," he said after a pause. "My mother. This was just her opening move." "I know," Elena replied. "She'll go deeper next time." "So will we," she said. He looked at her, eyes soft. "You're not afraid anymore." "I still am," she whispered. "But fear doesn't own me like it used to." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't let go. Outside, the city was still restless. But inside, something was finally settling. Something real. He could feel it. The quiet before something broke. Elena walked in, still in her robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired but not defeated. She hadn't looked defeated in weeks. "You didn't sleep again," she said, watching him. Ethan handed her the coffee and gave a half smile. "Didn't want to miss the sunrise." She leaned against the counter beside him. "Liar." He nodded. "Terrible one." She took a sip, her eyes never leaving his face. "What's on your mind?" He hesitated, then said, "I want to give up the Langston name." Elena's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I want to legally remove it. From the trust, the estate, everything. I want to cut the last tie between me and her." Her eyes searched his. "I thought you already had." "I left her. I turned my back on the company. But the money, the name, it still follows me. It still owns pieces of me I don't want anyone touching." "Ethan, I don't want the kids to grow up with that weight," he continued. "I don't want them to be told they're heirs to something built on cruelty and control. I want them to know their worth comes from us, from you, from love, not from marble statues and bloodlines." Elena looked at him, stunned. "That's not a small decision." "I know. And you're willing to lose everything that comes with it?" He turned toward her, eyes raw. "I already lost everything once. And I'd do it again if it meant protecting you and them." Her voice softened. "They love you, you know?" His throat tightened. "Even when they don't understand everything, they feel that you're trying, that you're staying." He leaned against the counter beside her, shoulders heavy. "I keep wondering if I'm doing enough." "You're doing what matters," she whispered. There was a pause before she added, "And I'll stand beside you. If you let go of the name, I'll stand there when you do it." He turned to her slowly. "Will you take mine instead?" She blinked, heart stalling. "I mean, not right away," he said, rushing the words. "I'm not asking for marriage now. I just meant someday. If there is a someday. If I can earn that. I think about it." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Let's focus on keeping the name from destroying us first." A laugh escaped his lips, quiet, grateful. "But," she added, "if someday ever comes, maybe I'll think about it." He smiled, a spark in his chest he hadn't let himself feel in years. Then the phone rang. Ethan answered quickly, every muscle tensing. "Hello." It was his lawyer. "Ethan." The voice came through the line, sharp. "We have a problem." Ethan's back straightened. "What now?" She filed an emergency injunction with the children's court. Claudia's requesting immediate temporary custody of the triplets, citing endangerment due to media exposure and psychological trauma. Elena's body stiffened the moment she heard the words. "What?" she breathed, stepping closer to Ethan, trying to read the conversation through his expression. "She's alleging that your actions, going public, moving into Elena's apartment, disrupting their routine, constitute an unstable environment." Ethan's hand clenched around the phone. "That's insane. We've done everything right. She's pushing for an expedited hearing. We have 48 hours. Is she out of her mind?" He snapped. "She wants to take them?" "Yes. And if we don't prepare something airtight, she might actually succeed. You need character witnesses, documentation, proof that those kids are thriving under your care. She's coming for blood, Ethan." Ethan hung up without another word. Elena was already shaking. "She's going after the children." He nodded slowly, his eyes glassy. "She wants to rip them from you, from us." Elena sat down hard in the nearest chair, her face pale. I can't go through that again, Ethan. I can't lose them. I won't." "You won't," he said, falling to his knees in front of her. "I swear to you, Elena, I'll fight this with everything I have." She cupped his face, desperate, trembling. "I don't care about the money. I don't care about reputation. But those are my babies. They are mine. And she will not take them." He pressed his forehead to hers. "She'll have to go through me first." Elena pulled him into her arms, both of them holding each other like the world might shatter around them at any second. Neither of them slept. Neither of them could. Because tomorrow morning, they were walking into court to prove they were a family, and that their children didn't belong to a name or a legacy or a bitter woman desperate to rewrite history. At sunrise, Elena stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her hands trembling as she tried to pin her hair back. Ethan appeared behind her, holding a small silver clip she hadn't used in years. "I remember this," he said gently, reaching to help her. "You wore it on our anniversary once." Her eyes flicked to his in the mirror. "That was a good day," she whispered. "It'll be another one." "I'm terrified," she admitted, voice cracking. He turned her to face him. "Then be terrified. Just don't be silent." She nodded, a tear escaping before she could stop it. At the courthouse, they walked in hand, though the grip wasn't romantic, it was survival. Marianne was already there, seated nervously on a bench outside the courtroom. She stood when she saw them. "I'll say everything," she whispered to Ethan. "The lies, the threats, how Claudia coached the staff. All of it." "Thank you," Elena said softly. "She doesn't scare me anymore," Marian said. "But she'll try." "I hope she does," Ethan muttered, "because I want the judge to see exactly what we're up against." A bailiff opened the door. "Langston hearing. Room 6B. Inside, the courtroom was cold, modern, almost clinical. The judge, a stern woman with no visible emotion, adjusted her glasses as both parties took their seats. Claudia was already there, dressed impeccably in charcoal gray, her expression carved from stone. When Ethan and Elena walked in, she didn't look at them. But when her eyes did lift, briefly, coolly, Ethan caught the familiar glint. Not malice, not anger, certainty. She thought she'd already won. The hearing began with formalities. The judge listed the accusations: unsafe media exposure, emotional instability, potential psychological harm to the children due to ongoing public scrutiny. Elena's fingers clutched Ethan's under the table. Then Claudia's lawyer stood and began. They painted Elena as unstable, erratic. They brought up the years she had struggled alone, calling it neglect masked as independence. They questioned her mental state during the pregnancy, citing no family support. They even implied the children were being used as leverage to emotionally manipulate Ethan back into her life. Elena kept her eyes on the judge, blinking back tears that burned with every word. Then it was Ethan's turn. He stood slowly, hands steady even as his heart raced. "My mother's entire argument hinges on fear," he said. "She wants you to believe that because these children weren't raised in a mansion, they were raised in danger. That because Elena did it alone, she did it badly. But that couldn't be further from the truth." He looked at Claudia. "My mother was the reason I walked away from them. She fed me lies. She fed herself lies. And when she lost control over me, she turned her attention to the next generation." He turned to the judge again. "Elena didn't keep the children from me. I abandoned them, and she protected them from that pain. She built them a home from nothing. She taught them love without limits. And now, she has let me back into their lives. Not because she needed me, but because she saw that they did." The judge studied him, still silent. "Look at the photos, the letters, the drawings. Talk to their teachers, to our neighbors. Talk to Marianne, who worked under my mother for 20 years and is here today to testify against her. That is the truth. And the truth doesn't live in a bank account. It lives in breakfast tables, scraped knees, bedtime stories." He paused. "My name doesn't make me a father. Showing up does." When he sat down, Elena finally let herself cry. Marianne was called next. She spoke softly but firmly, recounting the threats Claudia had made, how she had instructed the staff to hide the truth from Ethan. She described Elena as strong, protective, real. Claudia never reacted. She didn't blink. After hours of testimony, questions, silence, and waiting, the judge finally closed her folder. "I'll review all documentation and issue a decision by the end of the week." Elena's heart sank. Another delay, another stretch of unbearable suspense. But just as the judge stood, she added quietly, "Until then, the children will remain with their mother, and Mr. Langston is permitted full access as co-guardian." Claudia's eyes flicked upward. For the first time in the entire hearing, she looked surprised. Outside the courtroom, Elena finally exhaled. "That wasn't a win," she said. "It was a line in the sand," Ethan replied. Marian hugged them both, whispering, "She knows now. She can't hide anymore." And though the war wasn't over, a battle had been won. Elena walked through the door in silence, her coat still clinging to her shoulders. She stood for a moment in the hallway, listening to the quiet hum of the apartment, soft breathing through bedroom walls, a distant siren in the city, the steady sound of her own pulse finally slowing. Ethan watched her from across the room, leaning against the edge of the kitchen counter. He hadn't said much on the drive home. Neither had she. The weight of the hearing, of seeing his mother again, of saying everything out loud in front of strangers, it had pressed into them like gravity. Now, in the safety of their home, the silence finally cracked. "She looked at me like I was a stranger," Ethan said softly, "like she didn't know who I was." Elena turned, her voice quiet. "Because she doesn't. Not anymore." He nodded, eyes distant. "I wonder if she ever did." He walked over to her, slowly, unsure, like approaching a wild thing that might bolt. "Elena, what you said about being terrified of needing me again, I get it, more than I ever let on." She leaned against the wall, folding her arms, holding herself. "I still do." He stepped closer, but not too close. "So do I." She looked up at him. "I was so sure after the hearing that I'd feel relief, that I'd feel safe again. But I don't. I just feel like the ground hasn't stopped shaking yet. Because it hasn't," he admitted. "Not really, but we're still standing." Her eyes filled with tears. "Barely," he nodded. "Barely still counts." He reached out slowly, gently, and touched her hand. "I want you to know something," he said, "before we get that verdict, before anything else happens." She looked at him, silent. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I've seen you break. I've seen you carry more than anyone should. And I've seen you never stop showing up for our kids. For me, even when I didn't deserve it." Her lips trembled. "Ethan, I need to say this now, because I didn't say it when it mattered. And if everything gets torn away tomorrow, if the judge changes her mind, if my mother finds a way to win, you need to know that to me you are the center of this family. You're the reason they're alive. You're the reason I came back." Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet, unresisted. "I spent years believing you stopped loving me," she whispered. "I never did," he said, voice cracking. "I just stopped believing I was worthy of being loved by someone like you." She stepped forward, her fingers brushing the edge of his jacket. "Then don't leave again." "I won't," he said, barely breathing. "You'd have to drag me away." Her hand found his, held it. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," she whispered. "Neither do I," he replied. "But tonight," her voice faltered. "Tonight, I don't want to be alone." He didn't answer. He just pulled her gently into his arms, holding her like something sacred. Not like a victory, not like a prize, but like a truth finally spoken after years of silence. They didn't kiss. Not yet. They just stood there, forehead to forehead, tears shared in the quiet. Their bodies remembered what it meant to be home. Later, she fell asleep curled beside him on the couch, her breathing slow and steady against his chest. And Ethan didn't move. He didn't close his eyes. He just watched her, his fingers brushing lightly through her hair, and whispered into the dark, "Whatever happens, I'm not losing you again." But miles away, in a downtown office lit only by a single desk lamp, Claudia Langston was already preparing her final strike. One document, one name, one revelation left untouched in the courtroom. A secret no one else knew. 3 soft raps against the door. Ethan opened his eyes instantly. Elena stirred against his chest, but didn't wake. The apartment was still half-lit by dawn, the hum of the city not yet at full volume. Something in the air felt wrong. Too still, too calm. He carefully slid from beneath Elena and crossed the room quietly. When he opened the door, a woman stood there, mid-40s, sharp suit, calm eyes. "Mr. Langston?" she asked. "Yes." She handed him a sealed envelope. "I'm from Judge Marlowe's office. This was delivered early. It's urgent." Ethan took the envelope, pulse already rising. "The ruling." The woman gave him a tight nod. "Have a good day, sir." She walked away without another word. He closed the door slowly, feeling the weight of the envelope grow heavier in his hand with every second. He stared at it, then turned to see Elena standing silently in the hallway, barefoot, arms folded tightly across her chest. She had heard everything. "Is that it?" she asked. I think so. Neither of them moved for a long beat. Then Ethan said, "Let's open it together." They sat down on the couch. He placed the envelope on the coffee table between them like it was something alive. Elena reached for his hand. He took it. Ethan tore it open. He read it once, then again. His eyes froze on the last paragraph. Elena leaned closer. "What does it say?" He swallowed hard. His voice came out rough. "We won." She blinked. "What?" We won, Elena. The judge ruled in our favor. Full legal custody is yours. My name is on record as their father. Claudia's injunction is dismissed. All claims were rejected. Elena covered her mouth. Her body began to shake. "Say it again." He turned to her fully, tears in his eyes. "We won." She laughed and cried at the same time, her arms flying around his neck. "We won, we won, we won." He held her tightly, overcome, felt unreal. After everything, after the shame, the years apart, the fear, they were finally safe. But the joy only lasted moments before Ethan felt something shift. A cold edge to the letter remained. A final footnote. He pulled away, brows furrowed. He read the last line again, carefully. His stomach dropped. "Elena," he said slowly, "there's something else." She froze. He handed her the letter. She read aloud. "However, in light of newly submitted medical records, the court requests clarification of paternity regarding minor Lucas Langston. A separate review will be initiated immediately." The silence fell like a thunderclap. Elena stared at the page, her lips parting, but no sound escaping. Ethan's voice was low. "What does that mean?" Her throat tightened. I don't know." He stood. "What medical records? Who submitted them?" "I don't know." His tone was calm, but his eyes were chaos. "Are they saying he's not mine?" "Of course he is," she said, standing too. "He looks just like you." "Then what is this, Elena?" "I don't know," she shouted. "I didn't send anything." He stepped back. "So who did?" And suddenly they both knew. "Claudia," they said at once. She had waited, held onto her final card, played it just as they thought they had won. Elena ran her hands through her hair, panic building. She must have dug through hospital records, maybe DNA markers, something she could twist. "But why just Lucas?" Ethan asked, breath uneven. And then another thought. He turned to Elena slowly. "Elena," he said carefully, Is there any chance?" She looked up, eyes wide. "Don't." He stepped closer, voice soft but urgent. "Elena, is there a chance Lucas isn't mine?" The question hung there, poisonous. Tears welled in her eyes. "Ethan, please don't ask me that right now. That's not a no." "I don't remember," she cried.